Let's talk about international relations, which right now resembles a reality show, except the stakes are global, the plot twists are unpredictable, and the consequences are very, very real. Imagine a high-stakes drama where every move is scrutinized, every handshake analyzed, and every headline could send shockwaves through the world economy. At the center of this drama are three superpowers: the United States, China, and Russia. They're not just the main stars, they're the producers, directors, and sometimes the villains of the story. The U.S. and China are locked in a tense, codependent rivalry, where economic ties run deep, but trust is in short supply. They need each other's markets, but they're constantly trying to outmaneuver one another on trade, technology, and global influence. Meanwhile, Russia plays the wild card, stirring up trouble and exploiting every opportunity to tip the balance. Whether it's energy deals, military maneuvers, or cyber tactics, Russia thrives in the gray areas, keeping both the U.S. and China on their toes. The latest drama: China buying Russian oil in record amounts, defying Western sanctions and sending a clear message that it won't be bullied into submission. These deals aren't just about energy, they're about forging new alliances and challenging the old order. This has President Trump threatening tariffs and sanctions, determined to punish both China and Russia for what he sees as economic betrayal. The rhetoric is fiery, the threats are real, and the world is left wondering who will blink first. But this isn't just about oil or tariffs. It's a saga of economic pressure, sovereignty, and global posturing. Every decision ripples through stock markets, boardrooms, and households around the world. The world is watching, not with excitement, but with dread, like a truck full of fireworks backing toward a bonfire. Investors are nervous, governments are scrambling, and ordinary people are left to wonder how this will affect their daily lives. At the core is a clash of ideologies. The U.S. wields its economic power to enforce its will, using sanctions and tariffs as weapons. China, on the other hand, is determined to assert its independence, refusing to bow to foreign pressure and building its own network of allies. This standoff isn't just a headline. It could reshape global trade and alliances for decades to come. Economists are anxious, diplomats are on edge, and business leaders are rethinking their strategies in a world where the rules are being rewritten in real time. So what's really happening behind the scenes? Let's break down the threats, the rejections, and the real economic fallout. We'll look at how these power plays are affecting everything from energy prices to global supply chains. We'll cut through the media noise to get to the facts. No spin, no hype, just the reality of what's at stake for all of us. Because this isn't just about Washington or Beijing. The ripple effects will hit your wallet, your job, and the global economy. From the price of gas to the cost of groceries, these international power struggles have a way of showing up in our everyday lives. Buckle up, it's going to be a bumpy ride. The world order is shifting, and we're all along for the journey. Let's dive in and see what's really at play. This chapter began with President Trump issuing a bold threat: new tariffs on China, specifically for buying Russian oil. The message was clear. Washington was watching Beijing's every move, and the stakes were higher than ever. Trump's words echoed across the globe, sending shockwaves through diplomatic circles and financial markets alike. It wasn't a formal policy, but a warning shot, part of the U.S. effort to isolate Russia economically. The U.S. government wanted to make it unmistakably clear: any country helping Russia skirt sanctions would face consequences. This was a new kind of economic warfare where words could be as powerful as actions. Just days before, the U.S. had doubled tariffs on India for similar reasons, making an example out of a key partner. The message was unmistakable. If Washington was willing to penalize India, a strategic ally, then China, its main rival, could expect even harsher treatment. This was a calculated escalation, designed to put maximum pressure on Beijing. Trump's threat wasn't random. It was timed just before a crucial U.S. China tariff deadline, adding urgency to already tense negotiations. The White House was using every tool at its disposal, hoping to force China's hand at the bargaining table. The world watched as the clock ticked down, wondering if either side would blink. At the heart of the standoff was oil. The U.S. wanted to choke off Russia's oil revenue, starving Moscow of the funds it needed to continue its war. China, on the other hand, was eager for cheap energy to fuel its booming economy. Both sides had a lot to lose, and even more to gain. This set up a direct confrontation between two global superpowers. The world's largest economy and its fastest-growing rival were now locked in a high-stakes game, with energy, money, and influence on the line. Suddenly, China's routine oil imports became a geopolitical flashpoint. What was once just business as usual now carried the risk of sparking a global crisis. Every tanker arriving in a Chinese port was a test of resolve, for both Washington and Beijing. The world watched anxiously. Would China back down in the face of American threats? Or would it stand its ground and risk a full-blown trade war? Investors, diplomats, and ordinary people alike waited for the next move, knowing that the outcome could reshape the global order. The stage was set for a high-stakes standoff, with both sides weighing their options and preparing for the next round of brinkmanship. Every decision, every statement could tip the balance. Now the world waited for China's response. Would Beijing escalate, negotiate, or find a way to sidestep the confrontation? The next move was China's, and the world was watching. Beijing's response? Swift, public, and unyielding. The Chinese Foreign Ministry declared its energy trade with Russia legitimate and lawful, a sovereign right, not up for debate. China made it clear it would keep buying Russian oil based on its own interests. This wasn't just a no, it was a rejection of U.S. interference in China's affairs. China's stance put the pressure back on Washington escalate or back down. This move fit China's long-standing policy of non-interference and positioned it as a defender of sovereignty. The message, China won't be bullied, and its partnership with Russia is non-negotiable. The world saw a confident China drawing its own red line. The ball was back in Trump's court, the standoff had just escalated, the stakes were now global. While the spotlight was fixed on China, the Trump administration was quietly orchestrating a much broader campaign. Tariffs weren't just a weapon against Beijing, they became a tool to shake up the entire global trading system. Suddenly, countries around the world found themselves in the crosshairs, facing new barriers and uncertainty. This wasn't a targeted strike, it was a global economic shockwave. Stock markets trembled, headlines screamed of trade wars, and investors scrambled to make sense of the new rules. The ripple effects were immediate, and no major economy was left untouched. India, for example, saw its tariffs on certain goods double overnight. This forced Indian oil refiners to halt purchases of Russian crude, disrupting long-standing energy deals and sending shockwaves through the oil market. The sudden change left companies scrambling to find alternative suppliers and manage rising costs. Switzerland, a country known for its precision engineering, faced a staggering 39% tariff on aircraft. This effectively halted deliveries of Swiss-made planes to the U.S., putting jobs at risk and freezing millions in trade. The impact rippled through the Swiss economy, affecting not just aviation, but related industries as well. Canada, Brazil, South Korea, and the European Union were all swept up in the tariff storm. Their exports to the U.S. faced steep new duties, straining diplomatic ties and sparking retaliatory measures. For many, it felt like the rules of global trade had been rewritten overnight. But perhaps the most dramatic move was a 100% tariff slapped on semiconductors and chips. This single action sent shockwaves through the tech industry, threatening to disrupt the supply of everything from smartphones to cars. Companies worldwide scrambled to secure components, and prices began to climb. Some companies like TSMC managed to secure exemptions for their US-based plants. But the message from Washington was unmistakable. If you want to avoid tariffs, you'd better bring your manufacturing to American soil. The pressure to reshore production was stronger than ever. The result? Supply chains buckled under the strain. Warehouses overflowed with unsold goods, store shelves went empty, and truckers faced endless delays at ports. Prices for electronics, appliances, and even basic goods began to rise, hitting consumers and businesses alike. This was more than just a trade war. It was a forced rewiring of the global economy. Trade routes shifted, companies rethought their strategies, and governments scrambled to protect their interests in a rapidly changing landscape. The U.S. was redrawing the rules of international commerce, and every nation, big or small, felt the impact. Negotiations grew tense, alliances were tested, and uncertainty became the new normal for global business. The world's economic order was being upended in real time. The consequences were immediate, but the long-term effects were only just beginning to unfold. The economic fallout was swift. The U.S. projected $50 billion a month in new tariff revenue, but that's a tax on businesses and consumers. Companies like Toyota warned of massive profit losses. Apple ramped up U.S. investment to dodge tariffs. Markets panicked, gold prices soared, and legal challenges mounted against Trump's authority. Tariffs meant global instability, factories halted, supply chains scrambled, and investment plans thrown into chaos. The U.S. aimed to punish rivals, but the collateral damage was everywhere. The world economy was suddenly unpredictable. This was the real cost of a global trade war. Social media spun a tale of Trump begging China for an oil deal and being rebuffed. The reality? The U.S. wasn't pleading, it was pressuring. Reports show the U.S. issued threats, not requests. China's shut him down moment was a rejection of U.S. demands, not a plea for cooperation. The myth of Trump begging distorts the real story, a clash of titans, not a one-sided snub. This was about power, not supplication. Understanding this matters. U.S. China relations are defined by rivalry, not weakness. The narrative of a desperate U.S. obscures the real grinding struggle for dominance. The truth is more complex and more consequential. The confrontation was only intensifying. Amid the China drama, Trump announced a supposed oil deal with Pakistan, news that baffled everyone. Pakistan doesn't have massive oil reserves, it imports most of its energy. Officials denied any such deal existed. The announcement was political theater, not reality. It's a reminder, not every headline is grounded in fact. In a world of real economic conflict, some stories are just unicorns. The Russian oil dispute is part of a deeper U.S. China rift. The old idea that economic ties would prevent conflict, chimerica, is dead. Now the U.S. is pushing for decoupling, untangling itself from China, especially in tech and critical industries. The 100% chip tariff is a clear move to cripple China's tech ambitions. China's answer? Invest in self-reliance and strengthen ties with Russia. This cycle of pressure and resistance is driving the world toward two rival economic blocs. Other countries are being forced to pick sides. The era of easy globalization is over. A fractured, regionalized world is emerging. The tariff war is just the beginning. The stakes are global, and the risks are rising. The world is entering a new, more dangerous phase. We're at a crossroads. The U.S.-China tariff war is reshaping the global order. Tariffs are now a primary tool of foreign policy, and the world is splitting into rival camps. China's defiance over Russian oil marks a turning point. Beijing won't play by Washington's rules. The result: strategic rivalry, supply chain turmoil, and rising costs for everyone. The days of seamless globalization are gone. The rules are being rewritten, and uncertainty reigns. Navigating this new world will require sharp diplomacy and clear strategy. The waters are rough and the stakes are high. The world must adapt, or risk being swept away.